Hi, Patrick. Welcome, and thank you for joining us here on ESG Square. Why don't we start with a brief introduction of who you are and Util and all of that?
Thank you, Nicola. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Patrick Uribe. As Nicola mentioned, I'm the CEO of Util. And I'll start by telling you a little bit about my journey towards Util and what brought me to Util in the first place, which is that I've been interested in sustainable investing for the better part of a decade. And a lot of that feeds into why I'm especially interested in what Util has been doing over the past 3 or 4 years. And I've been interested in sustainable investing, but I recognize how hard that is. When I joined the fintech world, I call it 6 years ago, I think now, at a company called Kensho, we did a lot of work using natural language processing, machine learning, AI, and I recognized the potential of these technologies to really start tackling some of the big problems in finance. And then when I finally came across Util a couple of years ago, I was really excited to see these cutting edge technologies being applied to this really critical area of our lives now that's so important to us.
Very good. Kensho is a very big name, so moving to Util is clearly a show of confidence. So good to see that. So you said there's an opportunity right now. Can you talk a bit about that? What is the impact of ESG and sustainable finance, I guess, in general on capital allocation? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing a couple of things that I think are the product of both recent interest and also kind of a long-standing trend that we've seen in other areas as well. I think the first kind of catalyst for this was really the end of the financial crisis and kind of seeing that the financial world was not disconnected from our day-to-day values. I think that was one of the critical pieces of this that started to make people much more interested in aligning their investments with their values altogether. I think we saw that a lot in the consumer world as well. Increasingly, people really care about the brands that they wear. They care about the companies that they buy from. And I think we're also seeing investors start really to ask the same questions about their investments. And so those are the two trends that I would say kind of have fed into this. And then over the past year, it's just really been explosive growth that has been fueled by a combination of ESG factors being aligned with very positive returns. And I think also the pandemic has really brought into very sharp focus that these are very highly interconnected issues. And it's really time to make sure that we get everything lined up so that our investments line up with our values and what we want to achieve as a society as well.
So it's about making better choices or more informed choices. I mean, if I'm a bit, like a layman, if I go to the supermarket nowadays, I can understand where the chicken or the poultry or the meat or other things came from, and I can make certain choices around how they were farmed, etc. Is that a bit what you're talking about? And how does Util help then in that realm, help investors make these choices? What does Util do?
That's it. That's a great analogy. Essentially, what Util does is we measure the impact of companies on the world. We do this by looking at the products that they sell, so how they generate their revenues. We use a variety of cutting-edge machine learning and natural language processing technologies to make sure that we understand that impact in, first of all, a really comprehensive way, but also in a way that's based on deep and wide-ranging evidence. And so that we can do that at scale. But it's very, very similar to essentially providing investors with just better information to make their decisions. If I go to the supermarket and I'm on a diet, it's important to know what kind of calories are in the food that I'm about to buy. If I care about the environment, I want to know where the chicken has come from and whether it's been farmed in a sustainable way, whether it's free range, etc. All of that's available to us as regular consumers, and yet in finance, it's extremely hard and extremely labor intensive to find out this kind of information about investments. And so that's really the challenge that we're trying to tackle.
So how does Util do that? What kind of information, more specifically, like what is the user case? If you could take me through that as either a private investor or as a bank, how do you help either one?
Well, absolutely. There are a couple of different ways. Excuse me. There are a couple of different ways. One of them is that we help private clients just understand the impact of their investments. So, for instance, traditionally, an investor looking at a healthcare company might assume that just aligns very well with healthcare outcomes. But at the same time, there's a lot of deeper information about that. There might be risks associated with hazardous medical waste, for instance, or in medicine, there's a lot of single-use items that don't recycle. If you care about recycling, or if you care about waterways, how does that factor into your investment? So what we do for private investors particularly is we start to look at the impact in this holistic and quite comprehensive way. The other way that we help investors is in triangulating ESG ratings. So ESG ratings is something that we're all very much familiar with, but they're really variable across providers. And we already know that they're not enough for us to make the kind of decisions that we really want to. So there are different criteria across providers, there's different scopes, different weights. And even then, most ESG ratings focus on what companies can optimize internally. So what's often missing is a sense of whether that company is selling a product that is making the world better or worse. And that's another area that Util really helps, because we're focusing on the products that companies sell. And I would say that the third thing is in looking at something like transitioning from high carbon industries to lower carbon solutions. We know that this is something that we want to do. We know that we're addicted to fossil fuels, and it's something that we have to do. But it's like any addiction; it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to get there. And part of that journey is the data that we need to provide, because we need to find a way to understand changes that companies make that are really transforming their business in a fundamental way that gets through that transition, or whether they're in fact just hoping to offset their footprint and still continue to grow their business in the same old traditional way.
Yeah, I think that last point, as a bank is very important. We are trying to help our clients transition to a lower carbon economy. And I think, to your point, if you could measure that progress over time, that would be quite a good story to be able to do. What are the trends now that you're seeing in terms of ESG investing or sustainable investing? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Well, so I think the main thing that I take away from the marketplace is an immense amount of activity. I think that's the key thing, is that ESG is of immense interest. But I would say the other thing that I'm seeing in the market is a lot of inconsistency. There are plenty of places where you might find a really wide range of ESG style labels. They may or may not be as ESG friendly as you'd like. They may or may not be as ESG friendly as you'd expect. And I think that's one of the key things that we're trying to address at Util is to give a really clear sense of how those metrics are actually playing out. Is it true that this company is environmentally as positive as it sounds, or is it in fact just to put it bluntly, just sort of putting a band-aid on a really gaping wound?
Yeah. So I think we're seeing similar things. Here in Luxembourg, we see ESG demand for ESG products growing quite substantially. I think you're touching on a few really key points around ensuring that it's true, it's real, that it is green and not greenwashing, which is a very big topic for us. You're based now in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, which is a place I do know relatively well, having been there 23 years ago, I think it is. Any plans to come to Luxembourg soon?
Well, I will certainly think about it. My experiences, including obviously this interview, have been really positive. So Luxembourg is looking pretty good on the list of next places to go.
Super. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. Very much appreciated.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Nicolo.